Okay, so what were we saying about Fernando and Taylor Swift?
Okay, literally. So because the Super Bowl is at the time we're recording this, the Super Bowl is today.
Yeah.
I'm so sad for Fernando because I know that he is absolutely sulking on the missed marketing because I know the NFL is absolutely flexing the hell out of Taylor Swift. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
He's everywhere, and so I know Fernando Alonso is just sitting with his head in his hands, like, if only this was a real thing, and the amount of viewership I would have brought to Formula One. Like, Formula One could have its own Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Oh, Taylor. Oh. If I was feeling 23 when we met.
Okay.
But I also just imagine he'd be like, oh, it's okay. You know, she's doing her thing.
You know, it's
that was
to make their crazy decisions.
Yeah, that was such a weird thing when everyone was like, "Oh, are they dating?" And then even Crofty on the practice during the practice session, he was dropping Taylor Swift references throughout the whole thing.
One of my first posts on Race Roadie was literally a Taylor Swift and Fernando Alonso.
Yes,
and literally songs I think Taylor wrote in advance about Fernando Alonso, and it's literally like Red for his Ferrari days. There's Cruel Summer because that's how Fernando Alonso started the terrible silly season.
Yeah,
there's Getaway Car because it has the word car in it. And then of course the Karma because that's what he used on the TikTok. But that was such a weird fever dream moment.
You know what I love? What I love about Fernando is that clearly Fernando's a Redditor, right? Like when I say Redditor, what I mean is not necessarily explicitly Reddit, but just like he's
into the lore.
He's into the lore. Yeah, he knows what's going on, right? Like I'm sure back in the day, Fernando Alonso had a Tumblr account and was just like trolling people all the time, right? Like all the time. I'm sure that's what he was about.
He was a young guy once. Yeah, he was young in the early 2000s. You know, hot shot driver. I mean, he was hip
when he wasn't cracking walnuts with his neck. You know, like he was like just trolling people on his keyboard.
I literally think there's a video of him somewhere where they're like asking this or that, and one of the questions was blondes or brunettes, and I think he said blondes. So, like, what more do we need? Fernando Alonso and Taylor Swift, please. Like,
is this
Fernando Swift?
Is this our version of QAnon? Like, you know what I mean? Like this conspiratorial thing. It's just like, no, actually, they are dating. Yeah. And this whole thing with Travis Kelce is a front.
Oh yeah.
No, Travis Kelce to Aston Martin 2025.
There we go. Get Lance Stroll out of there, right?
Exactly.
Can you imagine?
Oh, and then that would cause more of an enemy territory than Lance and Fernando because it would be the two Taylor Swift lovers just trying to beat each other.
I'm having like a hilarious image in my mind right now of like Aston Martin trying to retrofit the car to fit his giant like football linebacker body in this thing. Like he would be in the car and just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, like remember when they had that little video of like Will Smith tying Lewis Hamilton up in a closet and he was so tall and he made that helmet look so tiny trying to get into that car, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, these things are so small.
I can just imagine a comic strip of like Travis Kelce like shoulders in, like trying to drive through Suzuka like this.
Like you know those old like hot rod, like rat rod illustrations with like the gear sticks like out here and his like hands like out of the car. That would be like how he is. He's just like on top of it, like just driving around.
In one of those kiddie cars, do you remember? I don't know if you've seen the clip of Daniel Ricciardo's nephew in the kiddie car when it tips over. Maybe it was his godson, but there's a video on Instagram, maybe from like 2018. Of Daniel Ricciardo trying to babysit this kid. I don't know what relation the kid has to, but he knows the kid.
Yeah.
And the kid is like in those like cute little like kiddie car mobiles. Yeah. And it tips over and Daniel Ricciardo just starts laughing. That's how I imagine Travis Kelce like in a car doing it.
Just tips.
That's amazing. Well, everyone, you're probably wondering, hey, who's this third voice here? Well, we have a special guest today, and before we get started, I just want to welcome you all F1 or F off. You know, we are a podcast that likes to talk about F1, motorsports, drama, Taylor Swift.
Married at First Sight.
Married at First Sight, Bachelor, you know, all of
Harry
it.
Potter.
Harry Potter. We're all about
right.
it. So I am one half of the FOOFO guest, the FOOFO gang, FOOFO fam, hashtag blessed, Idris. That's all, not all of that is my full name, just Idris. But.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess you could be a half, but in today's episode, you're a third.
I'm a third. I am a third.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'm the other third, Gabe. And Idris, who is our next third? Who is the final third?
We have a very special guest today. You may recognize her voice from our Harry Potter collab episode and from her awesome podcast called Race Roadie. We have Reagan, everyone. Woo woo.
I'm the Daniel Ricciardo of thirds.
Oh yeah.
We're gonna be teaching you guys about fractions today. Actually, Scratch Motorsports.
There we go.
Half the thirds. No, hi, I'm Reagan. I run Race Roadie. And I said in the Harry Potter video, but I like motorsports. So I have to be here.
So wait, here's a quick question, kind of like to get things going. If we are the Red Bull team, right? Mm-hmm. You're the Daniel Ricciardo. Gabe, are you Max or are you Checo? Like, what's going on here? Who is the guy who's just constantly berated by Helmut Marko here?
I'm
gonna say you're Max.
You think I'm Max?
You're Max. I think because you got the voice down. I mean, we're not even doing this based off of personalities or anything like that. You know, just
maybe.
There you go.
You do have the Max voice down. That's one of the first things I think I learned about is your ability to do the Max voice is crazy.
I try my best. Speaking of voices, though, have you heard Adrian Newey speak? He has one of the softest, most delicate, English man voices ever. It's delightful to listen to.
Yeah,
it's actually embarrassing to say that I've never heard him speak. So I'll be looking that up right now.
Oh, you know, have you heard F1? Heard of the F1 Beyond the Grid podcast?
Yes.
With he does an interview with Adrian Newey on that, and it's pretty awesome to hear it to hear his whole history and process.
I'm definitely listening to that.
I mean,
check out our episodes first.
Oh yeah, of course, yes,
yes,
yes.
Hey, there we go.
100%, 100%.
Got our marketing right here.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess speaking of F1, that is kind of exactly what we're here to talk about, specifically with Reagan, because obviously on our podcast we're doing our best to try and get as many sort of perspectives and voices and interesting takes as we can on this sport that we all really love and enjoy. But sometimes, Idris and I, it's when we're talking about stuff, we can talk about what's going on, but sometimes, we are of this kind of symbiotic mind after being friends for so long that sometimes we need somebody to come in, kind of smack us in the face a bit with their ideas and their perspectives. And so that's exactly what you're here to do, Reagan.
I'm here, guys. Don't worry. I'm prepared.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right. So I guess the first thing, Reagan, we want to do is just give you kind of ask you, give you a chance to sort of expand on sort of, who you are, your fandoms, what you're up to, just, what, if there was somebody who was okay, who is this person in related to context of motorsport world, what would you say? What are the things that you want people to know in the motorsport world about you?
That's a good question. I think, primarily first I'd say check out my podcast because head of marketing, got to do those things. But then I'd probably follow up with I'm just really interested in branching out with everything. Mm-hmm. I started my journey in Formula One. The first motorsport I got into was Formula One, but my ability, I think, to go into different categories and delve into them and understand them has been a blessing for me. So I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to be able to contribute some IndyCar knowledge and just talk about the amazing people over there, because I love IndyCar. I've had the chance to go to race. I've had a chance to meet a couple of the amazing people on the grid, the amazing people behind the scenes. And so honestly, if I had to say one thing about myself as a motorsport fan, I'd just say I'm trying to do it all.
Got it.
Nice.
That's excellent. I think like one of the things I really want to get to know too is like what kind of brought you what was like the allure to racing, right? To motorsports, and like what was that like aha moment that clicked for you?
I had been loosely like following the standings, but I wasn't dedicated. Like it was literally like in every month or so I'd be like, oh, like who's winning right now? Like whatever. And I had originally gotten into it because I had been seeing like Twitch clips of Lando Norris and the gang, so like George Russell, Alex Albon, like their entire like Twitch madness, and I thought it was hilarious. So I was like, what is this? I like cars. I've always been a like kind of, you know, racing games at the arcade kind of girl. So
oh yeah, cruising the world.
But I was loosely checking the standings, and then that was 2020 2021ish.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the October of 2021, my uncle had gone to the race in Austin. And I lived pretty nearby. And so when I realized how accessible it was, like I kind of always thought like European, yeah, sure, there's a race in America, never going there. But when I realized literally how directly accessible it was to me, I was full on, this is what I love, this is what I want to do, this is what I'm passionate about. And so from there, it was literally just, you know, a consistent incline into just racing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool. And like I think because Coda's out in Texas, for those that aren't familiar, Circuit of the Americas, that's what it stands for, COT. But I think for those who don't realize, like it's not, if you don't have a race nearby you, it can be really hard to just get into the sport, right? Because it's so easy to get into basketball or football or baseball, whatever it is, because those games are around you all the time, right? Like every major city in the US, for the most part, has a major sports team of some sort, right? And like tickets are pretty affordable, pretty cheap, right? Even if you get nosebleeds, you know, and pay for parking, you're paying what, $50 to maybe go to a game and just check it out, right? And then merch is like easily available, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, with something that's so, whether it's IndyCar or NASCAR or F1, it isn't as easy, right? Like it feels like there's kind of like a hazing period you have to go through, right? Like, I have to do the research and like, okay, which team am I going to support? We have to
get recruited. It's almost like a job interview. Like nobody's offering you the job. You have to work for it. And so how you can tell how dedicated you are. It's like, why do you want to be a motorsport fan, Reagan? Well, I've looked at the company forever. I've done a lot of research, and it would just be such a privilege to be an F1 fan, and then bam, you're in or you're not.
And they're like, hey, yeah, great answers, bud. Give me a nice firm handshake. You start on the third, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, that interview went really good. And, we're really excited about what we've heard from you. And I love this idea that motorsport as general has like an HR department that like hires fans. I like that idea. Originally when Andres and I started our podcast, one of the things very specifically that we were trying to do as far as like kind of the vibe we wanted to give off, because I literally think I said it's like, if we wanted this podcast to feel like a place where even if you weren't into a motorsport in general, if you just wanted to have something playing in the background that just sounded like two of your friends talking about something that they care about, then that's us. You know what I mean? Like accessibility to the nines, you know. And because like, you know, and we also like we'll also always, you know, have always said like we're not experts by any means. I mean, Idris is an engineer that's an expert of a sort, you know, but I've just been a fan and just been watching and been caring for so much. And I think like it's like anything, you know, the people who watch like football, like I'm sure there's all these people watching the Super Bowl this weekend that are like sort of experts in the sport in a way, you know, even though they may not have ever played a football, like they understand the game enough to know kind of, you know, the ins and outs of things, or sort of how somebody's going to perform, why are they not doing as well as they're doing. You know, that just comes with time. And I think the thing that I would say, it's just like motorsport is, because it's such a specific, it's kind of a really specific sort of thing. And it's not that there isn't anywhere. It's just that like, if you're into a specific sport, it might be hard for you to get to those specific things. So like if you're into Dakar racing, there's only like one place where that happens. You know what I mean? like even rally racing, like there's only so much of that happens in America. Like unless you live in Colorado and go up to Pikes Peak, like you're not going to get too much hill climbing. And so I think that's like, but I think in that way it sort of makes it special. So like when we actually do get a chance to go to these races, it's like, it feels awesome. It feels like I'll never forget the first time I went to an IndyCar race in Mid-Ohio, and I stepped out of the car and I just hear the cars flying through the track down Thunder Valley, and I'm just like, oh, yeah. Like I never heard something like that in person before, and I was just like, this is it. Like this is the stuff right there. You know what I mean?
I mean, you brought me in as the IndyCar expert, and I can confidently say that there are things that I do not know and will get tripped up on. But I will say, like, you know, you've gone to Mid-Ohio, I've gone to the doubleheader in Iowa, and I think what struck me most, besides like the amazing roar of the cars, is the community. Because racing, or at least motorsports in general, I feel like it's a very obscure sport to be interested in. Because of that, the people you meet and the opportunities that like you get provided, and just the dedication that it takes to, like, you can't really be a casual enjoyer of racing. It's all or nothing. So when you meet those dedicated people, the community is crazy, and it's like, it's beautiful and it's awesome. And I literally would not have met you guys if I did not meet Elizabeth over in Iowa. And so literally just these connections just come from this shared passion, and I think it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool too. Just like you said, it's like because it's so small, right? Like the community of fans is so small that passion kind of like seeps out into those connections, right? And just like you said, that's how we met each other, right? And I can tell you that some of the people we met at the races we've been to, like we keep in touch with, you know what I mean? Like it's like both Shanali and Tiernan from Knockoff McLaren, for instance, right? Like we regularly talk to them all the time, and that's just from meeting in a shared venue that, you know, there's overlap in common interest there, right? So that's really cool. And so we're talking about IndyCar, right? And I think one of the things we really wanted to be able to pick your brain on here today was just IndyCar. It is a huge thing, right? It is bigger than, I think it's bigger than most people realize, right? Like I think prior to going to my first race, it was actually the same race that Gabe just mentioned here. We went to Mid-Ohio together. I think it's 2012 or 2013. And, you know, prior to that, I'd always known about IndyCar and knew that, oh yeah, there's race cars that, you know, they look really cool. They look awesome. They sound cool, but that just feels inaccessible to me. Right. But it has a very strong culture in our country. Right. And just in the world of motorsports. Right. And like the popularity of IndyCar, I think, has been booming, right? Like I think part of it is due to Drive to Survive with Formula One, and Formula One gaining popularity, and then people realizing like, oh, there aren't many races here in the U.S. What else is like this here in the U.S.? And people seeing IndyCar, they're like, oh, that looks close enough. But
that's how I found IndyCar,
right. And like, but like, there's huge differences between the sports, like whether it's like the culture around it, the origins, like the technical regulations, all these kind of things, right? So yeah, it would be great to just kind of pick your brain about where the sport is, right? What has you excited about this upcoming season, and just going from there. But I think one of the most fun places to start would probably be setting the stage for this upcoming season, right? For 2024, what all the drama, all the juicy bits of news from this off season, what is all that leading to? For this
those McLaren liveries too.
Yeah,
beautiful.
My compliments to Chef.
Oh yeah,
you guys have chosen such a good season to get into IndyCar, because we've had so many driver transfers. We've had this is, I believe, the second year that the Indy 500 is not doing double points, which is really interesting. In years past, the Indy 500 has been a double point race, so the winner ends up getting obviously a lot more points, and they found that obviously offers a huge benefit in the standings, because if you happen to be at a top team, if you happen to be a top driver, you're probably going to be getting some sort of leverage in the Indy 500. And so last year, I believe Joseph Newgarden's win was the first year that we did not see double points for the Indy 500, and they're continuing that. But then additionally, and we'll get into this soon, the technicalities are changing. We have hybrid cars coming. I believe, what race did Matt say? I think Mid Ohio or sometime around that. Sometime after the Indy 500. I'll go back and double check that. But they're introducing hybrid cars, which creates a whole kind of pool of intricate tech issues.
Yeah.
Because what is really interesting about IndyCar and why I call it a North American racing league is because we have races up in Canada, we have races in Ohio, Iowa, California, kind of literally all over this stretch of North America, and we have different circuits, we have different tracks. We have oval tracks, which Indy 500, for example, are literally, circles. Street courses, and we have road courses. And so that diversity, I think, is one of the reasons that that IndyCar in general is so fun to watch, because you have this pool of drivers that's bigger than Formula One. Formula One is what, 20 grid spots?
Yeah.
I think IndyCar goes up to at least 30 something for the Indy 500.
Right.
And so cool. they have extra entries for the Indy 500. So you have this pool of really talented drivers where teams are actually kind of closer in competition. And where if you're a master of oval circuits, that doesn't mean you're going to be a top performer.
Right.
You have one bad oval circuit race, but you're not good at street courses. How's that going to play out?
Yeah.
And
right.
I genuinely think it's one of the reasons that IndyCar is so fun to watch. And it's because of this intricacy, and because of you have to master so many elements. And this is such a good season to see people literally starting over mastering those elements.
Yeah. There's a couple of things there that you said that I want to expand upon a little bit, because it's something I haven't thought about yet. I didn't know about the Indy 500 having half points. I knew it was like a big pool, and because it's such a prestigious race. Was there a lot of pushback? Were people and teams not happy with that? Did it make the Indy 500 feel less of a prize to win because there wasn't half points? Did the money reward shrink? Are they using
money reward
half and half milk now?
The money reward, actually, I believe the prize that Joseph Newgarden got was one of the biggest winnings of the Indy 500 of all time. It was
really?
3.6 million just 500. He got a huge bonus, so I can assure you that the money did not go down. But
he could probably buy himself an IndyCar team with
that's
that
what
money.
I'm saying. That's insane.
I want Newgarden team. I want it.
Yeah.
But no, I think there was, I wouldn't say there was a lot of pushback per se, because I think in Formula One, we're used to a lot of tension between the FIA and the teams, just because there's a lot of gaps in kind of, Red Bull and Haas are very much opposite sides of the spectrum. Whereas in IndyCar, we definitely have these sides of the spectrum, but I'd say that we have surprises much more than we don't. We have surprise finishes much more than we don't. And so I'd say there wasn't as much pushback from the teams as I would say there was from the fans. Because even I'm just I think the thing that's so powerful about the Indy 500 is the atmosphere and the stakes of it. It's, it's called IndyCar because this was the defining race.
Yeah.
And I guess to see them, I definitely understand why they did it, because it was, you could for sure see that the impacts of where you would end up in the driver's standings based on the Indy 500. But I also think that literally correlates to why the race is so important and why it's so powerful and why it's so difficult. You'll hear drivers talking about how much they have to train and prepare. So I'd say there's definitely pushback, and I'm sure, there definitely still is, especially going into this season where, Joseph Newgarden probably obviously wants to win it again. Everyone wants to.
It's funny because it's got I was just thinking when you said it's called IndyCar because of the prestige of the Indy 500. Could you imagine if Formula One were called Monaco One, right? Or Spa One,
Basically, it's basically the same thing. And I remember watching it and just being kind of not sad. Sad's the wrong word because I was so happy Joseph Newgarden won, but I guess kind of like nostalgic because if we're getting into driver backstories here, but Joseph Newgarden has tried so many times to win the Indy 500. He is he's with the top team. He's with like the Red Bull Mercedes at its height, which is Penske and Chip Ganassi. So he's at Penske, and he literally all he wanted was to be a Penske driver. He literally signed like 1-year contracts to make sure that if a Penske spot opened, he had it.
Wow. Okay.
And so to see him finally win this Indy 500, to see the kind of look on his face, his family, the atmosphere, Roger Penske is now a part owner of the Indy 500. To sort of see him win on that track and kind of just like watch Joseph Newgarden in the standings go, boop.
Yeah.
Kind of anticlimactic, especially that he was so dominant last season. And I think he finished either 4th or 5th in the standings. And I'm just so curious, and I know you guys done this before. I want to see if I can do this time. I'm so curious to see how this season would have played out had Joseph gotten double points.
Yeah, well, I feel like maybe that was their original intention earlier with the double points, is because it's such a grueling, intense race.
Right.
But also at the same time, like, the Indy 500 is a race where people who are not racing in the normal season will enter. Right? Because you get like those one-off entries. It's like what's his face? Marco Andretti enters like every year.
Yeah, Marco Andretti's gonna enter again. I think.
Yeah,
he's not a permanent driver, but
and it's kind of like
Indycar,
yeah.
I've been told by Lauren that it's kind of like a Mario being like, yeah, no, you can't race the rest of the things, but we'll let you do the Indy 500, And so, like, I could imagine, if you won the Indy 500 and you were not participating in the rest of the season, and you just like raked in all those extra points, I could imagine that being kind of like man, you know what I mean?
Taking away, yeah.
I mean, of course, like winning the Indy 500 as a rookie, we've seen that happen before, where either their first season or it's their first time kind of having an entry. And what's crazy about the Indy 500 too is you have to qualify. So if you have a permanent spot on the IndyCar grid for the full season, it's not even a guarantee you're getting into the Indy 500. And so it's literally so high stakes and so crazy. And they're, who is it? Meyer Shank, I think, is bringing back Elio Castroneves, who is this big time, like four Indy 500 wins, IndyCar champion. And just, he retired. This season was his last full season, but he's coming back as Indy 500 entry. And, we see stories like that where, they've had people retire and then come back as an entry and win the Indy 500 again. Like, it's genuinely such a spontaneous race. The Indy 500 last year, I think we saw Santino Ferrucci for AJ Foyt go 3rd or 2nd. I think we saw him, 3rd. Which was a huge surprise. And you saw the atmosphere in the AJ Foyt kind of room of just seeing these people hold on to each other, hug, cry.
Yeah.
Incredible. And so the Indy 500 is such an electric part. And, it's the soul of IndyCar. I definitely understand and see where they're coming from in terms of taking away double points. But at the same time, it's like, Indy 500.
And even from a technical standpoint too, like they have completely different cars for that race.
Different setups.
Like the wings are like have these tiny little itty bitty wings rather than the big ones. Like the front wings different, and the
tires different.
The strategy has to be crazy too. It's 200 laps of pure stakes. Right. And so you see, these calls go wrong and like your heart hurts. And I think what's really cool about IndyCar that I would say we don't see in Formula One as much is the fact that like there's a genuine the general consensus for how hard these teams are working. Where like I feel like if we're watching Monaco and we don't like Alfa Romeo stake, we'd be like, haha, you crashed into the wall, like L for you, whatever.
Yeah.
But if we saw if we saw that happen in IndyCar, if we saw someone, you know, retire in the Indy 500, crash into the wall, like it hurts no matter, you know, if you're a fan of them, if you have no idea who they are, like if you just, you know, never bat an eye towards them, there's just a genuine feeling of like, this is what it's worth.
You know what? That there's some real quick. There's something there that I want to latch on to. And I didn't think about that until you just mentioned it. And I wonder if that's because we know how much work these guys put into this, right? Like even though the financial burden for teams to enter IndyCar is way lower than what it is for Formula One, like it's still like you know it's like a scrappy group of guys, right? And you feel like everyone's putting their heart and soul into this. Back at Mid Ohio last year, Gabe and we sat down at the corner where Simon Pagenaud, he like rolled over, right? And it happened literally 5 minutes before we sat down there.
Oh yeah, we like just got to the circuit and it had happened.
That was Mid Ohio, right?
Yeah.
And it happened with somebody else at Toronto, and I always get them flipped. Like I'm always like, oh, like it was, you know, Pagenaud in Toronto, but it's Mid Ohio.
Yeah. And I recall just thinking about how, like at the time, I felt like, whoa, like that, like first off, you never want to see like a crash or any kind of like injury or anything like that, right? But I recall like the trackside like support staff, like how I guess how strongly they were there and showing their support for the drivers in that instance, right? Like Gabe, I recall you mentioning that you saw like one of the trackside like nurse or medical staff like holding his hand and just making sure he's talking to him, right? And like I feel like would that happen in F1? I don't know. No, I don't think so. Yeah, no. I feel like there's more of like a maybe it was just that person, right? But I don't know. Just hearing you talk about that just made that memory come back.
Well, I remember I talked to Elizabeth about that because she had said that the IndyCar medical staff travels with the sport. So like these, you know, on-site
it's not
medical
circuit oriented yet.
These on-site medical staff, they have a relationship with the F1 team, and because they go with them throughout the IndyCar team, they go with them throughout the whole race. So like they have this personal connection with these drivers, and that, you know, obviously not only is that like, you know, I think more efficient, but it also is better for the drivers generally. And you know, to kind of expand on what you guys have been saying, I have a direct experience with this because when I went to last year's Portland Indy race, I had paddock passes, and like Reagan, you know, like you've been through the paddock, so you know this. And I mean, just let me start with F1 first. So F1, right? They show up to the circuit. Okay, they got their fancy trucks. They get those cars to the pit area and like get everything all set up before anybody can come in through the paddock, right? Like, you know, I get to IndyCar and I'm going through the paddock and I see them unloading the car off the truck and literally just wheeling it like 2 feet from my where I'm standing, just wheeling it over to the garage. The garages are wide open. They're doing testing. It's like I'm like 5 feet from the car as this is happening. And every single day I was there, I would see the same engineers rolling the car. They were like rolling the car over to get it tech spec'd and weighed. They like go over to they're all lined up for the fuel thing. They're chatting with each other. They're all doing all this stuff to get these cars prepared for this race. And then one of them hits a wall. And because I witnessed everything from off the truck to going to the mechanics to doing to this that right there, it was a demonstration of how much these guys go through to get these cars prepared. And you can just imagine the heartbreak. And I'm not saying that F1 doesn't have that. F1 100% has that kind of dedication, but the problem is that we don't see it.
Right.
We don't get that direct line. So when Marza Spin keeps spinning the car and hitting a wall, we're like, you know, he spit. But I'm sure all his engineers are probably just devastated one after the other. Yeah. And that was a huge thing. I remember the best moment I had of that was it was right before the race, and they were wheeling the cars out to the grid. Everybody was just sort of in a line, like watching them all kind of come through. I had taken some video of this, and I remember I was standing there, I was videoing one car, And then behind me, I think it was what are the AJ Foyt drivers or something. The engineer was pulling the car out right next to me, and he's like, "Oh, hey man, yeah, watch out there, buddy." And I was like, "Oh, sorry." He's like, "Yeah, no, it's good." And he just keeps rolling it, like not like get out of the way, like it wasn't like anything like that.
Yeah,
it was all just like, "Hey man, yeah, watch out." Like just really friendly, like really just like, "Hey, it's cool that you're here. Don't worry. Just like, I don't want to hurt you." And like that felt really that even in of itself felt accessible. It felt like, oh, I was part of this thing all of a sudden that I was witnessing. And I remember Elizabeth telling me, she's just like, you need to get a paddock pass because it is literally a game changer. And she was not wrong. It is a complete game changer. And I think and the fact that like a 3-day pass and a paddock pass for an IndyCar event is like $200, like if that, like that's incredible because like just the general admission at COTA was like what, $400, like $350. And like, I mean, you couldn't see anything. Like, I mean, you saw the racetrack, and and like COTA is thankfully a circuit that has like these grassy knolls you can just pull a chair up. But yeah, the accessibility is not there, and this kind of leads me into another thing that I wanted to ask you about, Reagan, because they talk about IndyCar. I see so many mixed things. I see IndyCar is on the up and up, but then I also see IndyCar is in the decline. It's slowly building itself. It doesn't know what it wants to do. And like every time I've been to an IndyCar race, I felt nothing but excitement, exuberance, and just really fun, awesome racing. And so like from your perspective, like where do you think they're at? Like, are they growing? Like, do people not want to think that they are? Is it because they don't have the Netflix surge that like they don't think, or they're trying to play catch up in that? Where do you think they're at?
Or is it the whole Honda thing?
Yeah. You had so many accurate points there. I think one of my best friends, like best motorsport friends that I've made is Matt Johnson, who is Scott McLaughlin's pit crew chief.
Sweet.
And so I literally, have firsthand experience. I'll email him every now and then and be like, how's it going? And so seeing that work, I got to tour the Penske haulers, seeing literally that their strategy room is like in this cute little hall, and like this, you can take apart the truck.
Yeah.
Easy, like, people are walking back and forth. A really good example of a crash you mentioned, Pagano, at the Indy 500, Kyle Kirkwood did a flip.
Yeah.
And you could just see everybody stop. And I think that is like so powerful. And I actually, hilariously enough, Kyle was one of the first drivers I met while I was in the paddock.
Yeah.
I was talking to him, and halfway through, I didn't say this out loud, but I had this epiphany of like, you flipped at the Indy 500, and you're just like chilling talking to me. Like, does that not like flash your mind at random days?
Yeah.
But I think in that way, seeing that community will always, as long as that community is there, I think it signifies that IndyCar is at the up and up. Because that's really the heart of motorsport, is being a fan. These drivers themselves are mega fans of what they do. And so I think in that way, as long as you have that community, as long as you have that bond, IndyCar is always on the up and up.
Yeah.
Now I think because of the success of Netflix, because of the success of Drive to Survive, there's a certain pressure to replicate that on other fronts. So for example, IndyCar has a series on CW called 100 Days to Indy, which follows the countdown to the Indy 500. It's a really good show. I love it a lot, but it's not getting like the Netflix type of viewership. It's definitely reeling in views. Like, we're getting new IndyCar fans, but it's not getting that.
I think it's because it's on the CW.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest.
So it's like in between what, like, what's that one show?
It's like Flash season 9.
Or Scrubs season 9.
Yeah.
You watch the show out of respect.
Yeah.
For dedicated, lifelong fans, when the show moves off of a big streaming service, that's it goes to CW.
Right.
That's like, Riverdale, like season 5. Like,
oh, Riverdale. Oh my God, Riverdale.
Yeah.
Like, I have so many thoughts.
But hilariously enough, 100 Days to Indy is actually great, and they focus on a new team, a new driver each episode.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I think in that way, I think IndyCar is on the up and up, personally. Because I literally, the only reason I'm engaged in IndyCar, the only reason I'm interested in IndyCar is because of the environment that it has. And so I think in that way, I'm not seeing a decline. But I do think that there is a certain bubble of protection in terms of it is our community. We don't want to let stragglers in, which Formula One had when, you're a DTM fan, get out. Like, it's going to happen, of course, if you have an established fan base and if you let other people in, if you make it more generalized, more known, like you're going to have that tension. And so I think in that way, people are like, oh, IndyCar's on the decline. We're not like we used to be, but genuinely, I think it's on the up and up just because of how powerful the sport is becoming. And I think how epic it is that Formula One has paved this path to greatness for motorsports, which I don't think we saw before. And so regardless of what you think about Netflix and, United States entertainment, whatever, regardless of what you think, there is a path that has been paved. There's a circuit that has been created for these motorsport leagues to just become amazing and to come into fruition and to just blossom. And so I really think that IndyCar is reaping the benefits of this for sure.
Yeah. And it seems like with sorry, Gabe, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say people forget that IndyCar has as much of a history, if not more, than Formula One has had. The Indy 500 race dates back to 1910 or 1911 or something like that. I think
around then, yeah. It was actually brick, right?
Well, no, it was like dirt before, and then it was brick.
Yeah, and then it became the brickyard, right? So
it's like they were rolling around on dirt tracks, and it has such a huge history of things like they had the split. They had two splits. They had a split in the 70s, and then they had a split in the 90s. And it was like what you were saying, Reagan, with like how the drivers have to adapt to road courses and street courses and oval courses, and like it's a complete different thing. Like there was like the side that wanted to only do ovals because ovals were for men, and there's all this weird toxic masculinity tied up to it.
Yeah,
and it is a racing series with a lot of history. I mean, even more than like NASCAR. NASCAR didn't really exist until the bootleggers in the 30s. So they have at least 20 years on them, and even and NASCAR now has its own Drive to Survive. I think it's called Full Speed or Full Sense.
Wait, I do remember this. I do remember this because I know people in it. Oh wait, I can't tell you the name, but I know what you're talking about.
It's not it doesn't sound as dramatic as Drive to Survive. It's just like NASCAR full throttle, and it's like, oh, okay,
full speed,
full speed. Yeah, that's it.
Full speed,
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, which I'm gonna watch because I feel like I have to, but I also don't like this idea that motorsports need to have a Drive to Survive. Like that's the one thing that a lot of these companies and marketing firms don't understand. It's like just because something is popular doesn't mean you need to replicate it.
That's where I think people are like, oh yeah, IndyCar is on the decline because we're just trying to be like everybody else.
IndyCar's doing better than F1. Honestly, if I'm gonna be honest, as far as marketing to people and being accessible, they're doing way better.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting about you saying that is that the reason that people are so, I would say I'm not upset, but so against this huge level of new marketing, new era in social media is because IndyCar in the past has had a lot of struggles with reaching into media and kind of breaking this fan public barrier. And so I think because of that, if you are a fan of IndyCar, you literally are, part of this underground organization operation that's going on. Because while the struggle with IndyCar marketing has been so surreal, what Formula One has been able to do, and why I think, especially for IndyCar, it's so kind of, butting heads, is that because this barrier has been broken on the Formula One side, it's people are trying to break it on the IndyCar side. And I think because IndyCar has that insane history, and I think also because IndyCar has those ties to Formula One in the past, and even now, we've seen the move of Pietro Fittipaldi to RLL for this season, which is one of the driver moves. But he's a Haas reserve driver. He has the literal Fittipaldi name, which is motorsport kings all around. But I think seeing the connections that IndyCar specifically has to Formula One has been one of the reasons that I think it's a divide between, do we want to, market this like everyone else and try and break this barrier, or like, do we want to be this adorable, like accessible, region? And I agree with Gabe. I think really what's been so powerful about IndyCar is the community and the accessibility.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because for sure I think the lack of gatekeeping is what makes it so popular, right? Like gatekeeping, I think in all of its forms tends to be very very elitist, right? It excludes, is a very exclusionary type of practice, right? And you see that a lot, just like you mentioned with Formula One, like all the shade fans, newer fans I should say, that have come into the sport because of Drive to Survive and whatnot. I feel really bad for them, like all like the crap they get, right? Like, oh, you're just a Max fan, or you're blah 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 blah, or you're just a Lewis fan, blah blah blah. And I think that's very unfair, right? To kind of put down someone of just that, oh, just because now I know about this, like suddenly like my passion and my interest in this is not valid. And that's really messed up, Yeah. So I actually think it's a really good thing that 100 Days to Indy exists. Although I think it would be cooler to do just the entire series. Like I understand that IndyCar, the Indy 500 is the heart and soul of the sport, right? But it's also interesting to see other intricacies of whether it's the different tracks, the different things people are going through, that that sort of thing. So maybe they'll actually expand that and focus on an entire season, right? And that kind of leads me to one other point too. You mentioned Fittipaldi, right? That's a pretty big driver change, right? And it sounds like for this upcoming season, there are some nuts things that are about to happen, right? As far as like driver swaps, team swaps, some really cool liveries we've seen that have been revealed so far. So many cool things that I think that we need to discuss. Go ahead.
I couldn't help but notice that like Grosjean moved from Andretti to another team, and then Alex Palou suddenly took like the DHL outfit. So like it's like I'm like, wait a minute. So like that's really confusing. That would be like if like that would be so like if Bottas. Yeah, I was gonna say like it's like if Bottas suddenly left to go to Toro Rosso, but then Stake F1, like the Stake logo and the green livery suddenly went to like Max Verstappen or something. Like it just feels like this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So like, I'll explain why that is and why I think that's really interesting. Well, firstly, the thing that I was pointing to is that this is the team Grosjean moved to, is Volunteer Racing, and it's actually quite unfortunate because the jersey I'm wearing belongs to Callum Ilott, whose spot he took. So we're not going to really dive into that too much because I may be a little bit sour about that.
Okay, all right.
But no, so something that I think is really interesting about IndyCar, another point that I'd love to bring up, is that drivers don't particularly own their numbers or sponsors. So where you see, Monster Energy is, a new partner in McLaren, but Lando has that sleek helmet with Monster. You see Lando bringing in Quadrant as a personal sponsor for him for, his brand into it, where Formula One has that kind of, I wouldn't say liberty, but where, Lando is the iconic number 4, where we see that in IndyCar, teams own selected numbered sponsored cars.
Okay.
So Aero McLaren has cars 5 through 7.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And then, Penske has 1, 2, 3. Ganassi is 4, 5. Like, actually I don't know particularly what the Ganassi numbers are. But so teams have designated numbers. So where we've seen an interesting driver move we've seen David Malukas move why don't I know? Oh, Dale Coyne. We've seen him move from Dale Coyne to McLaren. Where we've seen that happen, he went from number 18 to number 6.
Oh, that's so trippy.
And which is really cool. Yeah. But the reason that would be confusing is that DHL, who sponsored Grosjean, does not go with Grosjean to Hugo Hollinger.
Right.
So DHL has moved on to sponsor Alex Palou, who is the reigning champion.
Yeah.
So I believe he either changed his car number or sponsors moved, because who has American Legion now? Linus Lundqvist has American Legion, who is Alex Pillow's old sponsor.
Yeah.
And Linus is, a new addition to the team as well. And Chip Ganassi is actually expanding pretty severely.
Yeah.
But in IndyCar, we see these kind of, teams kind of have this stake in who's sponsored by who, which I think is really interesting. But I'd also say it makes for really convenient where I have my cute number 77 Cal Marlin.
Yeah.
It's nowhere to be found.
Yeah. Well, it was confusing to me, though,
still
too.
Sour about. I'm going to be completely honest. Like,
absolutely. You spent money on it.
Yeah.
I want him back. Callum, please come back.
Well, it's funny, though, too. It's like I bought a bunch of Roman Grosjean merch and had him sign it, only to have him leave the next year.
That's what I'm saying.
And the DHL is now with is now with Alex Palou, who drives for Chip Ganassi and not Andretti. So it's like, so the DHL
I think the reason that happened, or something that may be associated with that, is that though Alex Palou's the reigning champion, the last person to win Ganassi the Indy 500 was Marcus Ericsson. And he's just gone from Ganassi, who's like basically the Mercedes of the Red Bull Mercedes Prime.
Oh, okay. All right.
Has gone to Andretti. So this is like, this kind of reminds me specifically of Sebastian Vettel going to Ferrari, but if he had won a championship there, and then kind of just went to Aston Martin and said bye.
So Lewis Hamilton going to a Ferrari, would that be like Will Power going to like Andretti?
Or Ganassi. It would be like Will Power going to Ganassi, quite frankly, because we've seen such a title fight between Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari in the past.
Right.
That like Will Power going to Ganassi after everything he's done with Penske would be like after all the all the fun we've made with making fun of Ganassi.
Is there? Would you say like in IndyCar, like is there a Ferrari of IndyCar? Like would that be Penske? Like who has that kind of like reputation where it's like they've been there for so long that it doesn't feel like it without them, and like drivers want to race for a particular organization because it's so prestigious or whatever. Like is that Penske or
Penske?
Yeah. Okay,
I'd say if Ferrari had Red Bull's level of success. Mm-hmm. With the Ferrari level of, reputation
and brand,
that would be Penske. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely. Okay. Yeah, because like I mean that's a thing to think of, because you are making comparisons there, and I am curious. It's like I know of Chip Ganassi, I know of Penske, I know Andretti, and I know there was
Ray Hall.
Ray Hall.
AJ Foyt's another prominent IndyCar champion.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what is the Andretti equivalent in between like Formula One and IndyCar? Like, are they McLaren's in IndyCar, so McLaren is the McLaren.
You mean racing family?
McLaren of IndyCar.
What was that?
McLaren's the McLaren of IndyCar, especially with where they are. Like they're actually doing well, but not, the greatest.
Sure.
McLaren's the McLaren of IndyCar. I'd say the Andretti of Formula One. I want to give that to I want to give that to
Alpine.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't make me pronounce that. I can. I've said Alpine. I've said Alpine. I've said Alpine. Like who knows at this point. But no, I'd give that to them just because I think I wouldn't call them a relatively new team per se, but I'd say that they're modern enough. Mm-hmm. Where they haven't quite got that they need.
Sure.
But I think that the people there have the potential, but maybe not there.
Okay.
They have drivers with great potential. I don't know if they can offer the potential.
Okay.
Okay.
But we've seen them win races. Don't get me wrong. Kyle Kirkwood's out here, slaying the day away. But I think in regards to Formula One comparisons, I think it's definitely they're modern enough, and I don't think I've seen what I want to see from them.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I mean, now that we're on this comparison train, I'm very curious about this. So I'm just gonna pick a handful of F1 drivers, and I kind of want to get your take on who that person is.
Let me bring up the IndyCar driver list.
Okay.
So that I could like get these.
I'll give you some softball tosses here. So on the IndyCar grid, who would you say is the Lewis Hamilton right now?
Super cool.
Scott Dixon.
Scott Dixon. Okay.
Scott Dixon. Okay.
I feel that. So like, because in this example, what I'm thinking is someone who's had like a lot of previous success, like up to a recent point, right? And then, for a couple of reasons, the last couple of years haven't been as hot, but still has it, right? Like that. That's kind of so. Scott Dixon's that guy.
I'd give that to Scott Dixon because I wouldn't say that he's had the level of falling off that Lewis Hamilton has had in regards to kind of Mercedes and that complete.
Yeah.
But I think
that's a nice way to put it.
Zero side pod. Yeah.
We're still seeing Scott Dixon breaking records. We're still seeing him doing incredible things, getting points, helping his team out. He's dedicated to Ganassi, and he's a family guy. So I'd say I'd give Dixon and Hamilton that comparison. I don't think there's been that quite severe of a kind of cliff dive that we've seen from Mercedes' performance, but I give them that comparison for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
How about Max Verstappen?
Alex Palou.
Okay. So
I felt that.
Like personality wise too, like.
Oh, personality wise. Ooh.
Like who's the guy who's just like, I don't know, I might just leave the sport,
Oh no, personality wise, I'd give him to Will Power. Because Will is a huge sweetheart, which we've determined. Go watch the Harry Potter episode, guys.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, please go watch it. Spoiler alert, Max got Hufflepuff. So I think, and I've had the absolute pleasure of talking to Will a couple times. Great guy. He's so sweet. But I think in regards to like the sportsmanship and I'm a race car driver first, they definitely have those defining kind of mantras. And so personality wise, ambition wise, I'd give him the Will Power. I think stylistically he's a mix of Will Power and Alex Palou.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got one, Gabe?
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, it's almost hard to make those comparisons only with like some people could be sweethearts and have a lot of success, and then some people could be like complete jerks and not have success, and vice versa. Like I definitely got the sort of like I kind of felt Oscar Piastri and Alex Palou kind of had some of the same vibes, because of the whole contract thing that was happening, where it's like
that's fair.
That is really cool. Like I remember that was a whole,
and all for McLaren too. Like what is McLaren doing?
So clearly they're putting all their money into livery designers and not into the legal department and making sure their contracts are shored up, because that is a complete travesty. How do you like?
They asked for a lawyer and they got a graphic designer and ran with it.
Yeah.
They're like, yep.
I mean,
well, you know what they did? I feel like Zach Brown definitely was in his office one day and he was like, I don't got a lot to do today. Let me watch an episode of Suits. And he got inspired.
He's like, Meghan Markle's on this, right? Yeah.
So he definitely hired like a fake lawyer and was like, you can do lawyering every now and then. What are your other talents? And the fake lawyer was like, actually, like, I can draw pretty well. Like, I'm really good at like bringing things to life. And he was like, we don't have a car design yet. Get on that. And then halfway through, like the dude was sketching in his office and he came in and was like, we need some lawyering.
It's like a Red Bull or Bull's Visa Cash App V-Carb Racing. They did a similar thing where it's like they needed like marketers, but they happen to just hire somebody who's good at livery design. So they just like they have a killer, awesome looking livery, but it's still Visa Cash App Racing Bulls F1.
I saw a meme somebody used like the Drake, like that.
Yeah,
I saw that was like naming your team music hashtag Racing Bulls, and it was this, and then it was like designing the coolest livery ever.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing that just putting paint on a car makes it like just so you just get stoked for it? You know what I mean? Like
I'm proud for the car.
Yeah, it's like, visually, like visual things matter, you know? I mean, I always thought it was really awesome with Will Power had this like chrome, you know, when I think like Verizon and Chrome and IndyCar, it's Will Power. Like that, it's just, that was like iconic thing. Like Scott Dixon, like right now, same thing, PNC Bank, the blue and the orange, like it's just, it's branding.
Where I really want to make like a video where it's like a day in my life doing normal things, except I count the amount of companies I know because of racing.
Yeah.
Like PNC never would have known that was a bank. The only reason I know that exists is because I like Scott Dixon.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Husky chocolates.
Husky chocolates too.
Well, like, or like half the chewing tobacco. Like I have no idea what any of those are, and I'm just like, what is this Arrow?
Yeah,
you know, like you know, sponsorships in racing motorsport is a fascinating thing because there's always so many, like everywhere they do weird things that you don't know that they do. Like we were talking about how Mission Winnow is like a lifestyle brand, but also owned by a tobacco company.
You know what it's giving? It's giving AlphaTauri being a clothing brand.
It's like, are you really?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Like, I would not buy anything from you.
Yeah.
They don't even market it. Like I've seen like maybe one campaign ad with like Nick DeVries and like a cool like vest. But I was like, you don't what?
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody was buying. Nobody was gonna. No one was really buying AlphaTauri.
To the point where, and I can admit this now that I'm a diehard fan. But when I started following the standings, this is how bad of I'm not a car geek, which I think people confuse, which is like, you like motorsports, like
there's a big difference
of like this car model, and I'm like,
I hate when people have to qualify like that. Nobody needs to be that nerdy.
That's what I'm saying. It's the gatekeeping aspect, right? We don't need it. We're not here for it. Get it out of here.
We don't need it.
Except for the fact that I did not know McLaren was a car brand.
Well, to be fair, it was not a car brand until like it wasn't really a solid car brand until like 2010, because like
was it
because.
2010?
Because think about it, like, so like Bruce McLaren, right? He like raced, he had his own team, he raced his team throughout all of the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Like it was just a racing
outfit.
They just had cars, right? They just had racing cars. And then in the late 90s, they made the McLaren F1, which was like this huge, like it was just like a performance street car. Even to this day, it's considered the best supercar ever made. Like it has like the center driving position. It was designed by Gordon Murray. Like it's this amazing thing, right? Then they didn't make any other cars. Like they didn't make any street cars. They worked with Mercedes to make the McLaren SLR, which was like this fast Mercedes, but it still was a Mercedes. And so it wasn't until I think it was like 2010, 2011, they had the McLaren, the 12C, which was a competitor for the Ferrari 458 at the time. And then from there, they just started mass producing supercars. So like they've only been around for like the past 10 or 15 years. So like that's definitely not, I'm not surprised. I mean, like I wouldn't expect everybody to know that McLaren was actually a car brand, because for decades, they were not. Like nobody knew what McLaren was unless you're into IndyCar or F1 or both, you know.
And on that note too,
because I am so glad you aren't judging me for that.
No.
Funniest thing when I tell people and they're like, and I was like, I know what it is now. Like I clearly know it's a car. Like
but now
I was in California, I want to say a year and a half ago. For like a couple of doctor's appointments. And my mom was like, all right, like it's been a week, like let's go take like a car tour, where we just went to like Aston Martin and McLaren and pretended like we were interested.
Yeah.
I had a friend who used to do that with his dad.
The dude at the McLaren store let me sit in the McLaren Senna, like full-on race car.
Yeah.
They had a window so you could see the apex from inside.
Yeah.
At the bottom.
What?
Yeah, isn't that insane?
I have to find the photo of this. It was one of the coolest.
What?
Yeah, those cars are insane. And
so cool.
McLaren wouldn't put Senna on a car if it was not one of the most intense like supercars. But you know what, Reagan? See, now that you know about McLaren's, a little bit about McLaren's history, they could be like, how do you not know that they were? It's like, well, how do you not know that they were? You know.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, look at that.
I got to sit in one of those. Let me find like a photo of. Oh yeah, here's the window. Like you could see the floor from inside the.
Oh yeah,
that's so nice.
You had the steering wheel was like a full on.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. Oh
speaking
yeah.
Speaking of
three quarter stature. Steering wheel.
Yeah. Forget 10 and 2. It is. What is it? 3 and 9.
And what I was gonna say too is that like I don't think you can necessarily blame you cannot be blamed for not knowing about McLaren's history, right?
No.
That's kind of like being a baker, right? Or like I go to a bakery to buy like a slice of cheesecake, and they're like, oh, you don't know about tiramisu? You don't know about all the ingredients that go into this thing? It's like that's stupid.
Yeah. See, and now Reagan, now you can clap back at them and be like, how do you not know that they were a racing organization between blah 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 blah? Like, you know, like just be like, they've only been around for like 15 years. Okay, give me a break. Like, you know, you just gotta, you know, you just slap back at it. You know, who cares?
Yeah.
I definitely the gatekeeping is the worst, and like it's unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality that for some reason men seem to think that they need to gatekeep women from motorsport extra. It's so stupid and it's so irritating, and it's like the most irrelevant questions, because I guarantee you most of them, like they might ask you like, oh, what's the horsepower of a Dodge Viper? They'll be like, they'll tell you, but then they're like, yeah, what's the horsepower of a stock Honda Civic?
Right.
Like, if we're going to be nerds about this, like you really want to get into the minutia of it, like let's talk about normal cars. Like
to the point where I'd been talking to a friend of mine about just like just podcasting and like why I was doing what I was doing, and he was like, well, you are the perfect demographic. Like when I had told Scott McLaughlin about my podcast, he was like, well, you know, you are the perfect demographic because you're the age range that needs to spread the word, and you are like, you're, you know, a girl, which needs to have, you know, these people need to be more passionate about it, because it truly is such an amazing sport. And if I go into like the comment sections of Formula One posts, I guarantee you I will find like a fight that's like, name every championship from 1972 onward, and it's absurd. Like the only person who can do that is Sebastian Vettel in that one Formula One challenge video. And like, no, I'm not naming every champion.
Right.
1972. Like,
right.
You know, 7 of those were Lewis Hamilton. Ta-da!
Yeah, there you go.
7 of those were Lewis. 7 of those were Michael. 4 of those were Sebastian.
There you go. And that's all.
One of those was Jenson Button. Couple were probably Nigel Mansell.
You know, there's probably plenty of people there who could have
been. Senna.
I mean, there could be so many people that when I talk about Formula One, it's like, oh, well, you weren't there during the early 90s.
Oh yeah.
And it's like,
you're just
a
baby. How you don't like, really know Senna? Yeah.
Everyone begins their journey some point.
Yeah.
I've had somebody tell me that they were like, you were there like with Senna at his prime, and I was like, I was not born.
Yeah. Also, I
was not born when Senna died.
Yeah,
right.
That's like at my job. So like I do guitar repair, and at my job, I'll have to talk to people who are like, yeah, I bought this 1965 guitar when I was 17, and it only cost me $300. And I'm like, okay.
Inflation, bestie.
Like,
yeah.
I'm like, yeah. Well, this one's $6,000, so I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I think like I'm of the kind of person that I believe that if you have a passion for something, you kind of almost owe it to yourself to to really dive into why, in such a way to where you really know what it is that you're into. Because if I ask somebody, they're like, yeah, I'm a fan of Star Wars. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you like about Star Wars? The lightsabers, they're cool. I'm like, okay, what else? Lightsaber battles. I'm like, okay, I get it, but like there's so many other things that like make this interesting that you really ought to do yourself a favor and dive into. And that's the thing about motorsport that's so cool, especially now when you have the F1 TV app, you can watch all those old races. Yeah, so like you could just like, next time somebody who's like in their 60s asks you about F1, you could be like, you know what, Rene Arnoux, he knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. Like, he should have had the world title, or like, you could just start dropping like old school names out there, because like you have that opportunity if you want to. But even if you don't, who cares? You know what I mean? It's just like what's relevant is what's right now, and I think like
have you seen the meme where somebody was taking a picture of like Fangio level old races, and it was like, I'm starting at season 1, like when does Max come?
That's awesome.
It's like one of the funniest memes ever. Like I was laughing.
That's awesome. I love that.
Because I was like, ooh, that's gonna be 83 years.
Yeah.
That was 83 is 2023. That's got to be, when did Max debut?
2016. 2016.
Was it 16?
2016 was his first. Okay. Yeah, he was on Toro Rosso 2016.
6 years, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy. Like, yeah. I mean, anyway, just to put a point on that, it's definitely like, it's frustrating, and like I don't think anybody should ever feel like they're being gatekept. It's like, you like what you like, get into it, figure it out, learn what you want to learn, care about who you want to care about. That's ultimately the goal of it.
Even if it is just lightsabers you like, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, like, and I'm not saying that you can't like Star Wars just for the lightsabers, but what I'm saying is like, when everything is there, accessible to you in this way, it's like, just deep dive into it.
Take a deep dive and see what else is there, right?
Yeah.
That's
what I'm saying.
Okay, so Reagan, here is the question for you. Like, let's say I know nothing about IndyCar coming into all this, because like everything you've given is like really excellent background, and like this is the case for why you watch IndyCar, right? There's so much cool stuff going on. Races are super accessible. I can go to get a paddock pass for super cheap, and I can like develop relationships with these drivers and like the teams, right? Like, what would I be looking out for this upcoming season, right? Like, we have our defending champion Alex Palou, right? Like, what's going on this season? What are kind of those interesting storylines that we should just be on the lookout for, and who are the heroes? Who are the villains?
Right.
Well,
like you mentioned about
episode.
Yeah, like you mentioned about like the hybrid cars coming in too, like, how is that being perceived? How is that being implemented? Like, what's the scoop overall?
Yeah, because that is one of the big storylines I've been seeing, that Honda apparently is thinking of like leaving, right? That there's like a big thing going on with them. But go ahead.
I would say, well, firstly, I'd say you were definitely right. Alex Palou is definitely looking to defend that title. Mm-hmm. I think we have really strong competitors. Honestly, I think this year McLaren is looking really strong. Like, they've been looking strong in the past, but I think the team dynamics that they're having, they are having basically a Lando Piastri fiasco, where we're seeing, I mean, there's 3 people per team. So we're seeing Alexander Rossi, who I believe won the 500 as a rookie. So we're seeing him as a mega talent. We're also seeing Pato O'Ward, who is mega talent and fan favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And we're also seeing newcomer David Malukas. And the reason I say that this is a Lando Piastri fiasco is that I'm actually really, really excited to see what that dynamic is like, because they are both uber talented drivers.
Yeah.
They both have these fantastic personalities that aren't going to clash, which is great. But on track, I think it's going to be super crazy to see how Pato, who is coming in, I think his 5th season with the team, looking to get a championship. He's, finished 2nd. He's finishing 3rd. Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And we're seeing newcomer David Malukas, who is now at a top high-performing team. And so seeing what's going to go down with that, I think it's going to be so interesting. So keep your eyes on McLaren.
Okay.
We're looking at Joseph Newgarden's obviously trying to defend his Indy 500 win. Penske, I think, is going to be really strong at the 500 this year. I think, I mean, like, kind of talking to Matt, knowing the drivers, I think they're going to be so locked in this season. And so I really think that, yes, they're always competitive at the 500, but I genuinely think that there is a certain level of, like, there's going to be a certain wow factor this year. And so definitely Joseph's going to be looking to do that. I think Will is going to be looking to make a comeback from last season. I think last season was not, I wouldn't say a bad, because I think what he finished maybe 6th. So I would say that he himself is a good driver, but I think on comparing himself to what he's done in the past, I think he's definitely going to be looking to make a comeback, make his name known again. Yeah. So I think he's going to be pretty fierce this season. I think Scotty Mack, my fave. I think he's just incredible person, incredibly talented driver. And so I'm really excited to see what he does, especially because he last season finished 3rd. I think he was the highest, or no, did he finish 2nd or 3rd? I have to check. He was the highest performing Penske driver.
Okay.
And he's basically he's not a rookie, but he's the rookie of all of the Penske drivers, because he's been at the team the shortest amount. And so I think that confidence going into this season is going to be really cool. I think Hunkos, Hollinger, is going to be a really interesting team for all the wrong reasons. Because I know I'm wearing their name, but I'm also wearing Callum's name, so I have to defend his honor.
Yeah.
I think they made a really bad decision saying goodbye to Callum. And I think the introduction of Grosjean with Canapino, who is their other driver, an Argentinian. The team is owned by Roberto who's Argentinian. And so Agustin Canapino is basically it's like an Aston Martin situation where Canapino is not the son, but he's the Argentinian of the team. And we have Romain Grosjean coming in, who is not super well regarded in IndyCar right now for the amount of crashes he's caused lately.
Right.
And so I think that's going to be really interesting to watch. I feel like maybe that's going to just fall apart a little bit, and I'm a little bit happy about it, but it's okay. Maintaining composure. I think Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing is going to, I think they're going to succeed expectations this year. I think coming into this season, I don't think a lot of people are expecting as much as we'll see from them. We have obviously the introduction of Pietro Fittipaldi. We have Graham Hall is still there. We have Christian Lundgaard, who's a name that's floated around F1 before. We see him at that team. We have Bobby Rahal, man, fantastic. He runs that operation like a ship.
Dumbledore.
Basically, Dumbledore. He runs that operation like a ship. So I'm really excited to see kind of what they have going into that. And so literally the amount of driver changes, we have the introduction of Marcus Armstrong, who's another name that's floated around F1, has a full-time seat at Chip Ganassi, where we only saw him doing ovals.
Okay.
Where we saw him doing everything but ovals before. We're now seeing him doing ovals as well. So we're going to see him try and qualify for the Indy 500. That's going to be really, really sweet to see. We have the introduction of Linus Lundqvist, who is coming from Indy Next, which is basically Formula 2 of IndyCar. And so we have that step up. We have Tom Blomqvist, who's I think going to Myra Shank. It's a name that's floated around. So we literally have all these really incredible transitions. These team dynamics are changing, but I think everybody is going into this season just, they basically all have to start over their mindset, especially considering the technical changes, which are going to be really cool. And I wish I had more to say kind of on the technical changes. I actually did an interview with Matt, so a little bit of a shameless self-plug.
There we go. Nope. It's all
You're
good.
Really curious about the technical changes, episode 13 of Race Roadie. But but no, the technical changes are going to be really cool. So we're seeing so many dynamics shift this season. I'm so excited to watch.
I'm excited too. Yeah.
So just hearing all this, like, has there been an off season like this as far as like driver swaps, all this kind of stuff, as prolific as this in the past? Because this is crazy. Like there's a lot of competing storylines here, and like if you like honestly like if you were watching last season, right, and then you come in this season and you look at the grid, you're just like, what the heck happened? That's what it sounds like.
I think this season is going to be much more exciting than last season. Last season was exciting. We saw Joseph Newgarden's Indy 500 win, which honestly highlight. He's such great guy. Like when I was at Iowa, he won the doubleheader, and I ran into him both times after he had won the races. His smile doesn't falter when he wins. It's just like, I know it's like, oh, like obviously like he's won, but truly like it's just so really precious to see. Like he's always so grateful when he wins. And so, I think this season is going to be a lot more interesting. Not to my knowledge have we seen something so prolific. I'm sure we have in the past, but going back to kind of what I've seen, what I've researched, like this is going to be a huge one, especially in the context of the quote unquote motorsport boom that's happening right now. I think everything's literally very much lining up at the right time.
Absolutely.
Nice.
So in short, what I'm hearing is that if you haven't jumped on the IndyCar bandwagon or the IndyCar train or choo-choo, whatever you want to call it, this is the time to do it, because like everything's changed. You can just pick a new driver, pick a team, whatever, and just stick with it, right?
And also additionally, and I think this is something that not can't be said about Formula One, but just like I think this is something that's really cool about IndyCar is that you cannot choose a bad driver to support.
Yeah,
it's going back to level of respect and just kind of that atmosphere. And coming from the people I've met a ton of the grid. You cannot support a wrong driver because they're literally just all in this because they are passionate about what they're doing, and they just really want to be the best that is possible with the resources they're offered. So genuinely, you can spin a wheel, pick a team at random. The only reason that I'm into IndyCar is because I thought McLaren was familiar. Pato spoke Spanish. I speak Spanish. Like bada bing, bada boom. He's But genuinely, like spin a wheel at random, and you're gonna find something so enticing about this season for sure.
Yeah. That's excellent. Except for Grosjean, right? He's the guy you don't know.
I have a soft spot for Grosjean. I supported him when he was in F1, and everyone was like, I mean, he's part of the reason why F1 drivers have like therapists now and like counselors, because after he yeeted his car over Fernando Alonso at the beginning of Spa in like 2012, and he destroyed his title chance for one, and like everyone was blaming Grosjean because they're like, oh, he's such a novice, he doesn't know what he's doing, and like he went to a really dark place and it was not awesome, and so he had to build himself out of that. And I remember at the time, like I was like, I always had a soft spot for Grosjean, and I remember when he went into IndyCar, like that first couple seasons, or the first season, it was like, oh, like he was actually doing like pretty good, he was getting some good finishes, and like people generally seemed to like him. But then like just things started to sour in the team. He started getting into accidents that were like maybe either his or not his fault, and like it just started to really kind of put in some rot that he had to get out. So I understand, like I know like Callum was your dude, but part of me is still a little glad that Grosjean's getting a chance to continue to try in this sport, because I think like it's something that could suit him, because I mean he's not coming back to Formula One anytime soon. So
I'm really glad that he's back grid, because like you said, his first season and a half went super well for him. I think he has really strong potential in IndyCar. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that potential suits who goes Hollinger.
Right.
It's a bit of a Lance Stroll Fernando situation. But I'm really happy he's back on the grid. Yes, Callum was my boy, but it's okay. Everyone has to go on their own adventures. But actually, like genuinely, it's just gonna be such a good season. And And Roman himself does really good interviews because he calls himself the Phoenix, like rising from the ashes.
Yeah.
He did
I have that hat
with my favorite driver of all time, Juan Manuel Correa, who is I'm sure you've heard of the Antoine Hubert accident. He was involved in that.
Yeah.
He's in F2 now, but he was involved in the accident, had to completely like rehabilitate, learn how to walk again, and learn how to drive again, and is now back in F2. Like, and just personally, like I've come from a place where like rehabilitation has been part of my life. Seeing that rise, and then seeing like the interviews he gives where he talks about like he got the hate of like, you caused this guy's death when you didn't. Like, seeing that rise, that conversation with Grosjean is so good. I implore people to watch it.
Wow.
Incredible. I like have an autograph card from him because you can write to Prema to send you autograph cards.
Cool.
And I got one from I bought like a Juan Manuel Correa like hoodie, and I got one in the mail, and it's like my prized possession.
That's
like,
great.
Crazy.
That's great.
But no, for sure. Like, I think Roman is gonna have a really interesting time this season. I'll give him that.
Yeah, I'm gonna be watching him. Yeah. Well, Reagan, speaking of teams and drivers, I think I don't know, unless there's anything else you want to interject. I feel like now is the time for Reagan to unveil her F1 Challenger, Grid Challenger, team, driver, and car. Obviously, like, it's something that we Idris and I like to do with all of our guests. I think there's only one guest that we didn't do that with, and that was Damon. But we like to ask everybody that we have on the podcast that if you were to run a Formula One team, what would be your title sponsors? What would be the car that you drive? And like, you can pick any era of F1 car you want. Like, if there was a specific one that you want, it's a specific one that you like I can accommodate that. And also, who your driver or drivers are for that team. And
I will say, you could actually go the direction of just pull an Andretti Cadillac and just say, forget it, I'm not adhering to F1 rules. I'm going to drive an IndyCar during this.
It's true. Yeah, if you want to do an IndyCar team rather than an F1 team, go for it. I mean,
just to show the FIA who's boss.
We can make it happen.
Okay, I'm very prepared. I've been waiting for this moment. Okay, so let me give my reasoning. This is going to sound basic, but the era of car that I would choose is the hybrid car. Why? Good question. Because that's where my love for Formula One started. Okay, all right. And though I love watching the old races and I love like the 1990s Williams, like I'm obsessed with it all, but I just genuinely think going back to my roots, that's the car that I fell in love with. Are you talking about like the 2020 hybrid era or like these newest ones? I think like the 2020, 2021. Okay. Era, like kind of just right in that transition. Good looking cars. That's where my love was found. And so I think that's where I want my love to be. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Drivers. I have a reserve driver too. Yes. Excellent. Sure. Okay. So driver number 1, I would have to say would be, and this is gonna sound crazy, but bear with me, Logan Sargent. Okay. Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, Logan. Is not about winning. My team is not about winning championships. Okay. It's about forming bonds. Okay. And I am all about education these days. Okay. And so I think it would be really cool if I got Logan Sargent on my team so I could media train him to give a TED Talk about what a kilometer is. All right. Love Logan Sargent on my team. All right. Okay. Oh, that hits me in my heart so well. Like that's close to home for me. One day you will literally see a TED Talk and Logan Sargent will be saying, "This is how I learned what a kilometer was." And it will be thanks to Reagan and her expert team when she was on FOOFO and she made the team and she hired me as a driver. Oh my God. Could you imagine him on stage? He's like,
hi.
Oh, I have ideas already in my head.
He's got the whole, like, you know how presenters, they always have their hands up? And he's like, hi, I'm Logan Sargent. I'm here to talk to you today about kilometers. What's a kilometer? Turn stage left. Well,
like, literally. No, I know this. I know that man would get on stage and do one of those, like, you know how whenever a speaker's speaking, he's like,
yeah. This, and then like, it really hit on the point.
Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what he would do. And the only reason I want him on my team is so that I could force him to do media, and that would be his media training. Is literally just that TED Talk.
That's amazing.
Okay.
So,
all right, I'm into that.
Number 1.
Okay.
Number 2. Jensen Button.
My compliments to the chef.
Simply because I love Jensen Button.
Oh yeah, so do we.
No other reason. Jensen Button has my heart and soul. And I was going to, when I was reflecting on what I was going to do with this team, I was like, do I want to go for like the most stacked team alive? And then I just thought, no, I'm coming out with a bang. I'm going to make something so outlandish that people will have no choice to support it because it's not a bad team.
This is true.
It's an underdog. It's an underdog.
Yeah.
Right.
People love an underdog. And it's not a hateable pair of drivers.
No.
We have Logan Sargent giving TED Talks. And we have Jensen Button just being Jensen Button.
Yeah.
Just being Jensen Button.
Beautiful.
Taking his kids to the park, driving endurance racing. Yeah. No, we love Jensen Button. Didn't you have Jensen on your racing team, Idris? It was Jensen Button and Julian Palmer.
Julian Palmer. Yeah.
Oh,
those are the two I picked.
Are we gonna have a contract battle for Jensen Button?
The good thing is that my lawyers are also part-time graphic designers. So
yeah.
I need. You know what I need? You know what you should do? Don't Photoshop my car. Photoshop Jensen Button over the Oscar Piastri announcement, and then make it the name of my team. Just be like, I'm not driving for either of you guys.
That's excellent.
I'll see what I come up with. I already have some ideas based on what you're saying. So
this is beautiful.
We're gonna see. I just need the title sponsors now. We just need. We need to know your reserve driver too.
My reserve driver. Great question. My reserve driver is when I finally went, you know what? I think I need like a actual like future talent. So my reserve driver is Kimi Antonelli.
Okay.
Kimi Antonelli is about to be in F2 with Prema. He skipped F3 because he's amazing with that. I've been following Kimi for 2-3 years since like he was like, very first like championship like mini category. I'm a cute Italian 15-year-old,
fresh faced, and
hasn't been impacted by the world yet. That type of Kimi Antonelli. But when he comes to join my team, Kimi Antonelli as a reserve driver, you know what his duties are? Just making us Italian food.
Love it. Love it.
And their catering budget is no match for my Kimi Antonelli.
We are checking.
So there's like a video of him like trying to differentiate like Neapolitan pizza versus like a different type of pizza. That's the Kimi Antonelli that's going to be my reserve driver.
Oh, that's awesome.
I love it.
It's just going to be, we need that Italian influence because Italian food's my favorite food. So we have the American, we have the Brit, and we have the Italian.
That's beautiful.
There you go.
I love it.
I like it.
With Logan Sargent bringing the ice Arnold Palmer's, right? Because that's his favorite drink.
Yeah, exactly. And the Eminem lyrics.
The golf pedigree.
Yeah.
We have Lose Yourself, which is Logan Sargent's hype up song on one side of the spectrum. And then we have Bella Ciao.
I saw online this morning about Kimi being a possible recruit for Mercedes in 2025.
I saw a meme for that. That was like Kimi Antonelli's face when he sees that F1 has posted the 17-year-old as a future replacement for Mercedes, and I was like, no, he probably woke up to like 5 of his friends sending that to him and was like, oh no.
It's just like, are we gonna manifest this? Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm ready.
Are we sure?
All right, well that's okay, that's perfect. So we got TED Talks, we've got Button, Logan, and this new young hotshot Italian driver.
I feel like I need to take a guess as to who your title sponsors are, though. It's gonna be like TEDx Sparrow, like that's the vibe I'm getting, but I could be wrong. Let's hear what you had.
You said education, so could it be Education Connection? Maybe Hooked on Phonics. There's lots of fun stuff out there.
Muzzy.
You guys are like so far off, but I'm really loving this.
Okay.
My title sponsor is Spotify.
Okay. Okay.
I really like music. Like, like it's actually really bad. My Spotify Wrapped last year was like 45,000 minutes.
Ooh.
Oh wow!
Which I've seen 50,000 minutes. Like I've seen people do worse than me, but for somebody who's like at a boarding school and has no time on her hands, 45,000 minutes is crazy. Like it's actually insane. And so I was like, you know what? They're gonna start paying me.
Mm-hmm.
So, Spotify is my sponsor.
All right.
But it's also just because I really want my team to have those, to make it into the F1 compilations of iconic radio moments, where they just have to sing everything because we're sponsored by Spotify. Every radio is just like box, and we have like our Spotify account, like Wicca Wicca slide, and it's like just radio announcements like you're gonna want to pit its plan B, like stuff like that.
Let's talk about tires, baby.
I love it.
Let's talk about 1, 2, 3.
So
that's great. Yeah.
So do you want to pick? Okay, so are you gonna go just Spotify, or are you gonna go for like a V-Carb situation here and have Visa Cash App?
More.
Oh
yeah, there's more.
Let's go.
Yeah,
okay,
she
so
said
Spotify.
There's more. Yeah.
Okay.
My second sponsor is actually a really wholesome one. This one isn't funny. So the foundation for the condition that I have is called the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation. It's a really long name, but I think it would be really nice if they were a part sponsor of my entire situation going on over here.
Okay.
So I'd really like to see. They also have a pretty cool logo too. So I'd really like to see them like on the front wing.
I like it.
Really cool.
All right. Okay. All right. Spotify.
And then my final sponsor. Back to funniness. Because if you asked any one of my friends, what is my defining trait? They would say, Reagan, you drink way too much Coca-Cola. So once again, instead of having Red Bulls, instead of having Monster Energies, Logan Sargent and Jensen Button are chilling on a couch with Kimi Antonelli, swigging back some Coca-Cola.
Okay. We talking Coke Zero. We talking glass bottle Coke.
Cherry Coke, vanilla Coke.
Like classic. Are we getting that polar bear from Christmas time involved here?
Yeah. Ooh, the polar bear from Christmas. Yes.
I forgot about that.
Okay. All right.
I would love to see it. I would love to see it.
All right. Okay. All right. Yeah, the wheels are churning. All right. Okay. I'm liking this is it for me. This is fun because this feels like a challenge, and a challenge that I want to tackle. So we might be getting a few photoshops out of this one. Because
my team
you
name
me a lot of Okay, yeah.
My team name is actually really funny. My team name is Can't DTS F1 Team.
Can't DT. I can't.
Because I thought that I didn't want to do a Visa Cash App situation and just do the entire thing. But I think it's actually really funny because I personally do not have my driver's license, so I literally can't drive to survive. So I am a motorsport fan. Yeah. So in retrospect, Can't DTS F1 Team.
Love it.
Is it Can't DTS Spotify Coca-Cola F1 Team? Like
no, they just have to be there. They're not like I don't really have title sponsors as much as they just pay me a lot of money.
Okay,
gotcha.
Okay, they're in the background. Okay,
Can't DTS. Oh, that's great.
Or we could do like a Can't F1 Team DTS, right? Like
they don't even have to pay me per se. They just need to provide me free services. So like I don't want to pay Spotify Premium. I want normal. Like I want
you just
Spotify
Premium. What if that's how you paid Sargent? You're like, hey,
no, that's how I pay Sargent. You get to listen to Lose Yourself ad free. Like.
Hey, sign with us. You get ad-free Spotify, all the Coke you can drink.
Exactly.
And you get to meet the Christmas polar bear too.
Exactly. Exactly. And you get to fundraise, which is part of your clause.
Make those Cokes Arnold Palmers and I'm in.
You have to fundraise $500,000 to leave this team.
Okay. This is an interesting, some interesting contract stuff happening. Yeah. I'm into it though. Yeah. You got to give a TED talk. You got to raise for charity. You've got to listen to a certain amount of song for 50,000 minutes. This is great. Yeah, no, I'm into it. Okay. And 2020, 2021 F1 cars. I actually really like the way those look too. Those are that classic black Mercedes.
Some sleek designs,
Ooh, I've got an idea for the polar bears and for the Coke cans. I've got an idea. We should talk.
Oh yeah, I could imagine. You know how like Red Bull has the Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez on the can, and Sergio does not look anything like himself on the can. He looks like really bloated. It's like this is not a real person. I can imagine the Coca-Cola cans having like, Jensen Button and Logan Sargent and Kimi on there, like just like with the polar bear.
I want to see them try and replicate Kimi Antonelli's like cute curly hair, on like the cylinder of a Coke can. I want to see how that works.
That's excellent.
We'll see. Well, we'll see. We'll see what can be done.
All right.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, I love that.
Well, Reagan, I just got to say, this has been such a special treat to sit down with you and pick your brain about IndyCar and just get your thoughts on what this next season is going to look like. Because, like Gabe and I, for sure, watching the season, it is. I mean, we're attending Mid Ohio again this year. That's the plan, and hopefully we can do some other races. But this is just so cool. And hey, if you make it out to Mid Ohio, it'd be great to do like a live collab. This is such a fun sport.
Yeah. I'm also trying to get Idris up to Portland too for the Portland race at some point. Yeah. Which, because like both of them are.
That would be fun.
Oregon is very fun. There's lots of really amazing things to do. You're always close to some really awesome nature. Like there's plenty of hikes. There's plenty of places. Like you're only an hour away from the coast, so you can go see the ocean in a day. Yeah, it's great. And the track is super cool. It's very old school, very scrappy, kind of 70s. I mean, so is Mid Ohio. They kind of have this sort of old school vibe to the tracks.
Right.
It just feels very lo-fi. It's cool. Yeah, no, they're great. But I mean, hopefully that is I want to manifest that moment. Hopefully that is something that will happen in the future, because like I mean, like all of the friends, everybody that I've met throughout this motorsport, it would be super fun to be able to like go to an actual race and hang out with in real life. Like that's the goal. Like we got a little bit of that with Shannon and Tenali. We're planning to doing that more. And same with you, Reagan. I mean, we're really glad that we got a chance to talk to you and meet you and become friends. Like this is great.
This is literally so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Reagan, where can the people find you and what are you up to?
Find me just at Race Roadie on Instagram. I'm blessed to have a non-complex handle. Thank you, Instagram. And then just Race Roadie by Reagan on Spotify. Hopefully we're gonna try and pursue some blogging maybe. So that in the near future, and just check them out. I'm really proud with what I've done with Race Roadie. I'm really proud, as you guys said, of the people I've met, the friends I've made. So if you want any part of that environment, just feel free to check it out.
It's the friends we made along the way, right?
That's right.
Exactly.
That was the key.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
All right, folks. Thanks for listening to F1 or F Off. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter. What else we got? YouTube, Blue Sky, Threads, all of it.
We on Blue Sky? We can get on Blue Sky. They opened it up.
I think we have a Blue Sky. Either way, we'll be on Blue Sky soon. Make sure you're looking out for us there. You can also email us at f1orfoffpodcast@gmail.com and give us a 5-star review, because that helps us out. Or 4.5 if you know, like if you're in the lore, if you're in the FOOFO.
If you're in the lore.
FOOFO lore, you know.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Tell your friends. Tell your family. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.